Hi, welcome to In a Pickle Knitting. My name is Donna. Today is April 18th, 2018, and today is episode 17 of In a Pickle Knitting. This is a podcast about knitting, some sewing, and other crafty things that I get up to. If this is the first time you're stopping by, I thank you for stopping in to join us, and I hope you find something here today that you are interested in. And for those who are returning viewers, thank you ever so much for coming back, and I appreciate your support so much in watching the podcast and participating in our groups over on Ravelry. There is a group on Ravelry. If you search the group tabs for In a Pickle or In a Pickle Knitting or just Pickle, you'll find the Ravelry group where we have some knit-alongs and a couple of threads just for asking questions or introducing yourself. So if you feel so inclined, please join us over there and participate in some of our make-alongs. So today I have one finished object and I have some works in progress to show you. One object that is half finished, and we do have our children's literature with a fiber related content to it today, as well as some things that I am planning for the future and some Etsy shop information at the end. And I will put some timestamps either on the screen or down below in the down bar, and I will also put links there to things that I mention. So let's get started with a finished object. So my finished object is a pair of socks that I showed last time, and they were in a half-finished state, and the second sock had been started. And these are one of the socks that I used for my experiment with different methods of knitting socks. This pair, I think I misspoke on one pair where I said that they were magic loop. And I indeed did finish a magic loop, but they had started off in the experiment as the 2 circular needles, which was my fastest method, and I got a good tension on the socks. I was happy with my gauge, and I liked the method a lot. It was new to me, but I found I decided to abandon that method because I have knit so many things magic loop. And when you do that, or when I do that, knit magic loop, and I finish with a needle, I tend to drop it. And so when I knit with DPNs, a lot of times I throw that needle that you've just finished with just because I'm used to dropping. But what I found with doing 2 circulars was all of a sudden I'd look down and I wasn't knitting with 2 circulars, I was doing magic loop because I would just forget. And I had a 24-inch cable on that, or cable needle combination, 24 inches, which is too short for me for magic loop. And I guess it's okay if your cord is flexible enough, but I guess it wasn't with the fixed circular on my Chai Goose. So I just gave it up and went to regular magic loop that I'm more accustomed to. But these socks, these were the double points. Okay. They were metal double points, and that's the first time I've used a purely metal double point. I do have carbons, but they're a little different. Their tips are different than the center part. These were Chai Goo, and they were just entirely metal. And I liked them all right, but I think with DPNs I actually prefer wooden ones. I don't know why. But these are the finished socks. They're the ones I did do a heel flap, and I did it all stockinette. And then I did a Dutch heel and just a regular, I guess, wedge toe. So I like these a lot. This is yarn from the Cozy Knitter, and this was called Summer Lovin'. It's one of her self-striping colorways. And it was part of a club, if I remember correctly. Now, I will say when I first got it, I thought, oh, that's an odd choice, purple as the contrast scheme, because these sets come with 85 grams of the stripe and 30 grams for the contrast, so you have enough to do your socks. Actually, either way, for me, I would be able to do them entirely self-striping or use the contrast. The 30 gram mini is plenty with leftover to do, at least with the kind of cuff that I do, but I did have this much left over, so that's, pretty decent amount. I could have done a much longer cuff and a lot of sock yarn left over. So what was I going to say about these? I've lost. Oh, I thought purple was, oh, well, usually it's a color that's in the socks. But I'm so glad she put purple because I really like the finished product. I think that any other color I might not like them as well as I do with the purple as the contrast. So another pair of socks. So this is used up some self-striping yarn, which was one of my goals this year. Well, that's my only finished object. So let's move on to the works in progress. Well, keeping with the sock thing, the next work in progress that I have is a pair of socks, and I do have one finished. This is, again, the Cozy Knitter on her Bliss base, and this is called Kiss the Girl, which I think is a Little Mermaid reference with the Disney version of Little Mermaid and Sebastian. These are sort of his colors, and you have a watery sort of colors, although this is a teal, not a blue, if it's not showing up that way on your screen. Now, I did almost the same thing on this pair of socks as on the last pair that I just showed you. I did the stockinette heel flap, but I went and put thread on there. There's thread on everything in my house. I did the 3 garter stitches on either side, which makes picking up stitches for your gusset a little different. I don't say easier. I think it's perfectly easy to do it the other way, but I have to say I'm not crazy about those slip stitches. It makes a nice stitch, you know exactly where to pick up, but I just don't like the looks of them, and I can never get both sides to have that slip the same size. Maybe that's because that's the way it is for everybody, or maybe it's just something I'm doing, but I'm not as happy with it. So picking up in the garter bump, you know right where to pick up as well, and I kind of like that. So this, I'm going to try and do different things on each one to see maybe what I like the best and come up with what's best for me. So I did like that, but I did the Dutch heel again, and I don't start my decreases until what I decided to do with these is finish off this color and then start the decreases. So my decreases ended up taking 3 entire stripes and a little bit into that stripe. But by not starting the decreases right away, this is the widest part of my foot where it stretches around the arch more. So that just gives a little bit of few extra stitches a little longer than just immediately starting the decreases. So I'm very happy with these. I think this, of all of the colors that I have for the Cozy Knitter, I think this is my favorite. Now the second sock is, I'm at the point of putting in the heel. So what I do is I wait until on a row I have started the next color, which is I don't have my yarn here, but is the same color as the contrast. That way, so I just start that and then I do the heel flap, so that when you come back, your picked up stitches are all in the same color. I've forgotten to do that before, and I think it looks better this way. I did switch from the Chai-Gu needles because these socks, I forget how they were being done, but for whatever reason I didn't have another magic loop. Maybe this pair was the 2 circulars. I'm not sure. Right now I'd have to go back and look. But I switched to my Addi. I think this is a sock rocket because it has the sharp tip. And they're the ones that, I don't know if you can see oh, you can probably see it right there. The tarnish. They sit on my hand right there, and they always tarnish, which makes it a little less slippery, but this part's really slippery and the tips are sharp enough for me to do anything that I need to do with them. Don't like the cord, and I don't like the join. They stick because I do try to knit with pretty tight gauge. I'm tensioning pretty tightly with my yarn to give a tight gauge, and they really stick on that join. So I love this part of the needle better than anything, but not the rest. So anyway, enjoying these socks as well. Love the colors. I think those are stunning colors. And that was Kiss the Girl. Okay, so that's my first work in progress, and let's go on to my second. Now this work in progress, if you are working on Helen Stewart Curious Handmade's Mystery Knit Along going on right now, the Impressionist Mystery Knit Along, and you don't want to see through the end of clue 3, then you'll want to look away or fast forward or something till I'm done with this, because that is my next work in progress, and I'm so pleased that I have kept up. That's why I've kept my works in progress just at the sock and the shawl, because I wanted to be sure to keep up. I don't know why, but I don't want to get behind. So I am going to pull it out now. We're up to almost 500 stitches on the needles, and I'm at 80%. So this time the clues weren't like balanced exactly, like 25% each of the 4 clues. The first clue had the most percent, the highest percentage, not by a huge amount. But I think that was super smart, because at the beginning of a project you're most excited and you're working across a shorter distance, so it's, you know, get back and forth across rows, which always feels like, you know, you can get to a stopping place quickly. So, and your enthusiasm is at its highest there at the beginning. So I thought that was really smart. And then the last clue, so the first clue had more than 25%. I've forgotten how much right now. I think 30 or less than that. So not, you know, greatly. But the last clue is only going to be 20%. So that's kind of nice too. To have the last clue that you won't be overwhelmed to finish it, because these are, like I said, they're almost 500 stitches, so they're long rows. Now, I do not weave any ends when I'm making a shawl until I have finished blocking, because I've had trouble with when colors change. I have trouble that side of the knitting is tighter than the side where you just flip around and come back. So you're going to see lots of hanging dangles. Okay, you've got all that. And I knitted onto, with my last row, a needle with a really long cord so that I could pull it out today. I really don't knit with it like this. I will, but I prefer a little bit shorter cord. Let me get, okay, this is the bottom of the shawl, but it is the front side. So I'll stretch it out there, and you can see there are little eyelets there, and some lace here, and a different lace pattern here. And then we've got striping. There's an eyelet pattern through here and a couple here. So let me flip it over the other way, which this will be the top of the shawl. And you see, it's, other than the lace, it's all in garter stitch, and you have all these fading in and outs of the 3 colors. My favorite color is color 3. And from the initial instructions, you will use the most of that skein of yarn. But I'm not sure it's going to show up as looking like the predominant color, because you're at the end here where, you know, you use a lot of yarn to go all the way across. But I'm figuring the last part is going to be pretty much all that color, or maybe just a little bit of the other colors, because one, let me see, my color A, which was to be the lightest color, and pull it out of my bag. I have this much left, which is enough to do, you know, actually quite a bit. I like this color. And then color B, I don't have very much at all, so I don't think I could do but too much with that. Maybe a stripe back and again. But you know, I don't think it probably matters a lot if you run out. You can, you know, it has that impressionist look and all the different colors anyway. And I'll tell you, I did make a little modification. All right, let me show you what I did. Up here where I was using the 3 colors and there was an eyelet pattern, it was set up with color B, color C, B, C, B, C, B, and then some more stripes. Well, down here, you were supposed to, on this row here, do this color A. And I just decided that between the dark, well, I'll just call it the purple, I just wanted it to look more like this with the color B as the 2 inside stripes. So that's what I did. And then this was supposed to be this color. I hope I haven't totally confused you, but I just switched these 2 colors. I just thought I want it to look more like this one. I don't usually make changes to a mystery knit along because you don't know what's coming and you don't know if it's going to be good or not. And I'm kind of hesitant to make changes in general anyway, unless I just don't like something, in which case I'm probably not knitting it. But decided that I wouldn't. Let me try to hold it out so you can see it a little better. I really like it. I'm very happy with it's big. I'll put a picture in here. I took a picture over on the mannequin from the back, and you can see how long it looks without even being blocked and not having the end of it done. So I'll stick a picture here. Okay, so it's obviously going to be a big shawl, and you use nearly 3 skeins. And this is my shawl that I dyed the yarn to kind of coordinate with this hydrangea bag, which I talked about on my last podcast as I'm calling it Jeans Hydrangeas, and that's what I will be calling the shawl. And I think the colors, not you don't go with it. The colors go okay, but I really want more of the darker blue purple. Now, last time I talked about, I showed the yarns I was going to use, but I mentioned that I had some yarn that was still wet. It was still cooling, I think, the last podcast, and I did end up using that yarn. I'm going to put a picture here of the two, the one that I had thought I was going to use and then decided to dye another skein. So I ended up using the lighter of the two that has a little more blue to it, which I think is a better match with the fabric on the bag. The other color was beautiful, and it would have been just fine with this. But, you know, if you've got a skein of yarn and you can dye it, you can then choose. Why not? So I did. So I'm so excited. The final clue comes out on Saturday. So by the time I podcast next, I should have a finished shawl that I can show you. Was there anything else I was going to? Hi, this is a quick little edit in from a bit later when I was trying to edit the podcast. I forgot to tell you something regarding the Mystery Knit Along shawl, the Impressionist shawl by Helen Stewart. And as it happened, last Sunday night I was knitting on this. I was about, I think about row 150 or so, and I was listening to the Comfy Red Couch podcast with Tracy, and she's a test knitter for Helen, and she mentioned that on row 153 she made a slight change in order to have more symmetry to this eyelet pattern. And it was when you do that particular row, you add in a knit one after your increase stitch, and then towards the end when you're going to be finishing that row, instead of a knit the last 7 stitches, it's the last 6 stitches. And I looked at it and I thought, if it involved symmetry and this improved it or made something that appealed to Tracy more, that I probably would like that too, because I look for symmetry. So I did make that change. I'm very pleased with how it turned out, and I appreciated getting that little tip in advance. So I thought I would mention it on my podcast as well, and then I forgot. So the lighting's a little bit off, I know, and probably things are in a different place, but I just did want to edit that back in. And another little thing, which actually comes towards the end of the podcast, but I'll put it in now and not do 2 edits, and that is when I talk about the Etsy shop update. I forgot to say that for domestic orders for this particular update, I'm going to have free shipping, and I'm going to try to apply a reduced rate on international shipping if I can figure out how to do that on the Etsy. So excuse Donna of the future here, and I'm going to pop out now and get back to the regular part of the program. Bye. I don't think I was going to mention anything else about that work in progress. So those are my 2 things that I have been working on since the last time that I talked to you. And so let me see where we're going from here. I don't very often talk about what I'm going to do next, but I do know what I'm going to do next. I've ordered some yarn for it, which has been shipped and probably will come today, but my mail doesn't come until between 4:30 and 6 in the late afternoon, early evening time. So it'll probably come today. I would love to have had it to show you along with the pattern. But every Saturday or Sunday in the afternoons or Saturday mornings, my husband and I are at Barnes & Noble. We have some coffee, we look at books, we decide what books we want to buy. I always look at knitting books and knitting magazines, although I have most of the books they have now, but I still pick something up and look through it. But I found this magazine called Creative Knitting, and I've frequently looked at it. I probably have a few copies of this, but I really liked this vest that's on the front. Sorry, I'm getting some glare there. You can see it's asymmetrical. It has lace at the bottom. It wraps, it ties inside here, and then has a little button with a loop here. And the yarn that it is made from, this is called the Yvonne vest. Okay, and I don't have the yarn here yet, so I haven't been able to feel it, but I'm kind of excited. It's a new fiber for me. I've never knit with linen, but this is called Mango Moon Summer Breeze yarn. It's a sport weight yarn that is 50% linen, 45% cotton, and 5% polyamide or polyamide or nylon, essentially. So I think that's going to be a great combination of fibers. I've knit with cotton. I made a cotton t-shirt before, and not 100% happy with it. I like the sweater, or tee, really. It's a short sleeve scoop neck raglan, but it stretches when you wear it. So I actually wash it and dry it and then wear it, and then, you know, it creeps down. It grows about 4 inches every time I wear it, and it pills a lot. But I don't knit many garments because I'm just too warm-blooded, and I get too warm. So I thought this looks like a great choice because it's linen and cotton, and maybe the linen will help, and I will also know to not make it too long, to think about it growing as I wear it. So I'm going to read up on knitting with linen. I don't think I'm going to be able to find out much about the fiber. I saw this at Barnes & Noble, pulled out my phone, looked up the yarn, and went to Ravelry first, and I think there was only one project there. They didn't even list any places where you could buy it. So, but I ordered this yarn in this color while I was sitting there because I just thought, you know what, I like that. That looks like something wearable for me, not too warm, but something that, you know, without sleeves, and then the fibers themselves. So I'm excited to get my yarn, and then when I finish the shawl, maybe get started on this. Well, here's Donna again from the future, a few hours later, and as I said, my yarn for the vest would probably come today, and it did. So I wanted to show it to you. It was called Mango Moon, but I don't see that written on it any place. It's the color Summer Breeze. The color is 2, the lot is 11, and I'd already stated the content of the fiber. It is 50 grams in each of the balls, and they say about 150 meters in that 50 grams, and I bought 2, 4, 6, 7 of them. It did say a DK weight. It looks like a fingering to me, but maybe that's part of how you knit it. Maybe the linen and cotton plump up. I have no idea. I'm going to read up on fibers like this and see if they have, you know, suggestions for knitting with a cotton linen blend. And but here we are again with, actually that's a nice little color match there. So my yarn did come for that vest, and I'm really excited that it's here. There was another pattern in there too that I really liked, and it was a tank, and I thought that was interesting with all the diagonals on there. So that's something else that I'm considering making, that's in this magazine, Creative Knitting. Okay, so that's something that's on the horizon coming up for us. Now let's move on to our fiber-related children's literature book. Well, if you watched my Vlogmas this year, which was purely about Christmas books, not fiber-related children's literature, but Christmas-related children's literature or holiday-related children's literature, you might have heard me say that one of my favorite authors for children is Cynthia Rylant, and she is up there in the top 3 for me. I love the fact that she can write so many different styles. She has little series books, she has chapter series books, many picture books. She has younger for entirely designed for the youngest children, but also those that are like 5th, 6th, 7th grade. She's won the Newbery Award. She's won Caldecott honor, maybe even a medal. I don't remember. But just a prolific writer, just so many books, and I like them all. Favorites I used in my classroom with some of my reading groups for more challenged readers, Henry and Mudge. They look like chapter books. Well, they actually are called Chapter 1, Chapter 2. And so is the book this year. But that having those books that are easier and more approachable for struggling readers is fabulous. So Henry and Mudge, favorite series of mine. But another series she has that's pretty much on the same level for readers is called Mr. Putter and Tabby. Now, Mr. Putter is an elderly or older gentleman, and Tabby is his cat. And his next door neighbor is Mrs. Teaberry, and she has a bulldog named Zeke. And they have all kinds of adventures between Mr. Putter and Mrs. Teaberry and their pets. Well, this one is titled Mr. Putter and Tabby Spin the Yarn. When I first saw it, I thought, oh, it's going to be a book about spinning. And I was excited because that's a topic that you don't see as much as you might see knitting. But in fact, it's not about spinning yarn. It's just that the yarn gets spun sort of around the cat. This is a cute story where Mr. Putter thinks he's really not such a great neighbor. Mrs. Teaberry's a wonderful neighbor to him. She's always baking him food, and all he does is eat it. And he doesn't feel like he does that much for Mrs. Teaberry, although I remember him walking Zeke a lot for her. But he finds out she is inviting some ladies to her home to have a knitting afternoon. And he says, well, why don't I come and I will serve the tea? Well, lots of things happen from then, and you can just imagine seeing that cat and that ball of yarn. But I will tell you, that ball of yarn is connected on the other end to a sweater. And at the end of the story, it's not a sweater anymore. So there are lots of shenanigans and hijinks. But if you have a child who is maybe 4, 5, 6, this would be a great read to them. But 6, 7, 8, maybe even reading for themselves. So I will turn to this page here where you can see some of the shenanigans that happened near the end of the party. That is a fake potato. It was part of a hat on one of the knitting ladies, and Zeke confiscated that. So you can see cute illustrations. There's Mrs. Teaberry, Mr. Putter, and you can get an idea of what the text is like, where there's not an overwhelming amount of text on the page. There's good spacing. All of those things assist early readers when there's not too much text. It doesn't seem as unapproachable, and also having a lot of white space between helps them keep their place on the line. Love it. Mr. Putter and Tabby spin the yarn. So let's talk about the giveaways, the make-alongs over in the Ravelry group, any prize drawings, and all of that in this segment. To begin with, I would like to have a new giveaway, and we will use the comments from YouTube. So right down below, if you would like to be one of the random comments to be chosen for a prize, then please make a comment below. And I've got to think about what to have the comment say or as a prompt. How about if you just mention one of your favorite signs of spring? So if below you will comment mentioning one of your favorite things that you look forward to each year. I have quite a few. They're all related to things that are growing, and probably other people will be as well, but maybe yours is just the warmer weather. I like especially seeing, I really can't say especially, there's so many things. The first sign of spring we usually see in our yard is when the Cynthia blooms, which is a yellow flowering twiggy looking shrub, or it can turn into a bush, I suppose, if they get really overgrown. Mine are very wiry looking, but that's one of the first things that'll bloom in our yard, right along with some of my daffodils typically. But one of my favorite things are when my red bud trees start to bloom. That's I love the color, and just, of course it always means spring, and the cherry trees as well. I have some of those. I'm going to be putting some pictures either at the beginning or the end of the podcast that show some of my favorite signs of spring, or some signs of spring I've seen so far this year here in Virginia. If I didn't mention, I'm in the northern part of Virginia in the U.S. So if you will say what's your favorite sign of spring, or any other comment you want to make, then you can be considered for the prize for our over 3,000 subscriber giveaway, which is so exciting. And just amazing to me that there would be 3,000 people and over 3,000 subscribed to this podcast. But I'm so appreciative of you, and I hope that I help you work through some of your knitting and crafting projects the way that other podcasters help me work through mine, because I am a listener of many, and you keep me company while I'm crafting. So I hope I'm doing the same for some of you. But what the prize is going to be, if you remember that bag that I showed you that I have my Impressionist Mystery Knit Along shawl in, that fabric, I'm going to be showing some bags later with that fabric. But what I've made is a little notions pouch. It probably won't be this one. This was a model and a few things I've been working on it. This is about my third variation of it, but a couple things I might do differently. But inside, I'm going to also fill it with knitting or / crocheting notions. Just some little, scissors and progress keepers, stitch markers, the little tools you can use to help yourself out when you're having a stitching problem, if you've dropped a stitch in knitting. I'll put a few things like that in it. So it'll be a notions pouch in my jeans hydrangeas bag, notions pouch, and it will have notions in it. So if you're interested in that, this is my way of saying thank you for subscribing. So write down below in the YouTube subscribers, and I will use that random YouTube comment finder again to choose a winner, and I will do that before the very next podcast. So if you will do that, then we will have a group of people to choose a prize from. So that's the first thing. Second, we do over in the Ravelry group have a make-along that is a 2-color project make-along. And there is a chatter thread and a finished objects thread. And I need to go back to the episode where I first discussed this to remind myself of the prize. My brain's telling me I was going to give away a bag, but I'm not sure about that. And I think also we did have another giveaway, and the winner was already chosen and already had a copy of the knitting pattern for the 3rd Times the Charm shawl here. So since that we couldn't give it to her because she already had it, I will probably include this 2-color shawl pattern from Elizzy Art, and just have her, I'll contact her, and she had offered to give one to one of the podcast viewers, so I will contact her when we do choose a winner. I had said I was going to draw on April 13th, but then some people in the group needed a little extra time, so I said, well, yeah, let's do that, because if somebody's close or just needs the extra time, that's fine. I hope those of you who maybe finished early aren't disappointed, but there still will be a prize, definitely, just that before my next podcast. So that's roughly 2 weeks from now. Right before I podcast is when I always go in and choose a random number generator and choose a winner. So if somebody wants to remind me to, I will go and look for sure, but I know that I cut this bag out. Don't you love the way I store my stuff? But everything's cut out and prepped for a bag. But I think that's why I did it, but I also think there was going to be a prize in both of the threads, the chatter and the finished objects. So definitely shawl. I'll make that bag if that's what it was. If it was 2 bags, then I'll be making another one too. So if somebody wants to remind me, but I will definitely go back and check before it's necessary. So we also have our sock knit along over there. This, I draw a prize every other podcast, so this is a non-drawing week. So just to tell you in case you don't know, if you're knitting socks or crocheting socks, you can go over to the sock thread and put pictures of your finished objects in the finished objects thread. There's also a chatter thread, and I keep that going all the time, and I draw from there just between the numbers. I'll write down what's the last number, and then the next time I start with the next number and go through whatever's there. If you are doing a first-time knit or crocheted socks, you may enter them twice in the finished objects thread to give yourself an additional chance to win. If you do stripy socks, and that can either be from self-striping yarn or You can do scrappy socks, which would make your own stripes. It can be self-patterning, or any design that you make your own color changes in your socks. You can enter them twice. And I did that because I'm trying to use it my self-striping yarn this year. And so I thought that might encourage you if you were trying to do the same. So that's another make along that's going on over in the group. And then we're going to have to come up with another one for the next podcast when I draw for the 2-color project thread. Then we'll have to come up with something else. So if you have suggestions for that, you can also leave that in your comment down below on YouTube. And let's see, so we did 3,000 subscribers, the socks, and the 2-color projects. So that's, I don't actually have a winner. That'll be, I'll be drawing today. So let's move on to our next segment. Now, you know, I don't usually talk about yarns that I've ordered, but every once in a while something comes and it just captivates me in one way or another, and I do like to share it. And this week I had ordered, I saw this finished sock or a sample knit up on Instagram, and I thought, that is just so stunning. And so I ordered it, and I was so pleased when it came because, of course, it's beautiful and it feels wonderful. I'll show it to you. This is a self-striping yarn, and you might notice there's a lot of purple going on, which I'm going to have to talk about or think about. A lovely tag and an adorable stitch marker. Look at that. It's an enamel wizard hat. This colorway is called, make sure I say the title correctly, Birdie Bot's Every Flavor Beans sock yarn. So this goes with the Harry Potter Birdie Bot's jelly beans. This came with it. Can you believe that? I mean, that is so sweet to send along these jelly beans. And I have had to hide this because Mr. Pickle in this house, I could tell you so many stories about him and candy. If he knew this was in the house, I would have only had the box to show you today, believe me. Well, I was just thrilled with this. This comes from artisticyarnbyabby.com. So she has a website. She does unique hand-painted sock yarns, including watermelon, picture yarns, holiday yarns, and many more. And she has her Instagram on here. I remember seeing some socks like this that you knit and made the picture and being just, oh my gosh. I never ordered it because I just thought, oh, I probably wouldn't end up getting the picture because my gauge would change or something. But I was thoroughly impressed with that. So artisticyarnbyabby.com. Isn't that beautiful? Now, purple. I would not say purple is my favorite color. Pink, this color, pink, is my favorite color. But when I look at what I've knit up, especially in shawls, I would think differently. At one time when I first took my yarn out of tubs, because I would forget what I had, so I put it in here so that I could look at it and see, okay, what do I have, to plan projects. And I looked at it, it's like, whoa, I have a lot of blue, which I like blue. I love every color, actually. There's no color I don't like. But I never would have said blue was a favorite color. Lots of blues and lots of blue greens. So somehow now I've shifted to purple. I don't know. I think I need to stop, be careful. But when I ordered this, I saw it and it's like, oh, but this isn't mostly purple. It really isn't. And if you see, I don't know if you can see it on the card or not, if I put it right up here and get the glare off, this right under here, that's what it knits up like. So it's a yellow stripe, purple, thicker stripe, yellow stripe, then the speckle to match those jelly beans, and then it repeats. Isn't that amazing? I loved it. Well, you know, I do kind of like brighter, crazier looking socks. I think they're kind of fun to knit, just watching all those different colors. And that's the segment. Let me see what's coming up next. The next segment is my segment where I want to talk about what I'm grateful for this week. And I actually have two things that are somewhat related. Well, they're related to the podcast. The first thing I'm grateful for is to all of the wonderful people who wrote the most lovely kind comments to me after the last podcast. I was very touched by the lovely comments that people made, and I really appreciate them. That it meant more to me than you'll know. It meant more than I even thought it would. It was just so very kind. I think it's something that most people can probably relate to in one way or another, but all of the people who comment to me, thank you very much, and I am grateful for your kindness towards me. And I especially appreciated the comments about what I'm doing being a tribute to my friend, because I thought to myself later, I hope that didn't look like I'm trying to be profiting from this, because that's absolutely wrong. I didn't say last time, and I should have, that I intend to take all of the profit from this project, and I found an organization that seeks to provide information to professionals in emergency rooms, I think in particular in emergency rooms, to identify my friend suffered a brain aneurysm of a particular kind, but of any brain aneurysm. I don't know why I can't say that today. Speed is critical in diagnosing, and this organization attempts to provide more education for recognizing the symptoms and signs to get quick treatment in the best facility. So that's what I intend to do with all of the profits from everything that's in this next Etsy shop update. I in no way want to profit from what happened. It was just a way of me. I have to do things. I have to use my hands and my brain to think about things and be productive. And I think if I described myself as anything, it's a maker. And if it doesn't matter sometimes what it is, but I have to be making something. So this was a way of me trying to deal with something that I'm still trying to deal with, but through making. And it's given me an outlet. And that was my only reason for doing it. It was just as self-therapy. So I am grateful for all of that. I'm also very grateful to Kathryn from Crafternoon Treats Podcast. She also is Crafternoon Treats. She has a Ravelry group and a blog, a podcast, and an Etsy shop. She is a yarn dyer. She's over in England, and she dyes yarn from very special yarns. She's very careful about what she's dyeing on as her base, using a lot of British breeds and just well thought out breeds. She has her own yarn that's being spun because she has her own label on this yarn. So I hope you'll watch her podcast. She is primarily a crocheter, but she's been watching my podcast for a while. And what happened was she approached me and asked, would we like to do a swap? Which thrilled me. And at the time I was looking just at fabrics for this project, because I've been thinking through this bag project for quite a while. And I was in that process, and she said, and I will dye for you some yarn. Either choose something from my shop, or she would be happy to dye something per request. And so I sent her a picture of the fabric and thought maybe, if she dyed some yarn for me for that, I could make something to keep close to me, something for me. If someone else made it, dyed the yarn for me, maybe it would even make it more special for me to knit with it and keep my friend in my memories. And so I thank her because I sent her a bag, and I did one different from bags that I make. But along the lines of what I was going to be making this time, I thought, well, this will be kind of a little test out of the sewing on this fabric and all of that. And so hers has a different contrast fabric and lining fabric, because at that time that was what I was going with, and I later found something else that I went with. But I made a bag for her, and on her last podcast, she was just so eloquent and speaking about my bag. I just have never heard anything like that about anything I've done, and I was deeply touched and thankful. But she recommended, or not but she also recommended that to some of her viewers to come on over and take a look at my podcast. And I've added a lot of viewers based on Kathryn's comments. And welcome to all of you. Thank you so much, those of you who subscribe to the podcast. It's what pushed us over the 3,000. So I hope you will put a comment below, and perhaps win the little notions pouch that matches Kathryn's bag. Now her bag is different. She's a crocheter, and she asked for a pocket for her crochet hooks, and she needed lots of zippers, so I did make a 3-zipper bag, and she needed larger. I also used a different material inside, which I'm not using for all of my bags. It's I forget what it's called, Shape and Flex, something by Annie, Bags by Annie. It was a product I just wanted to try, and since this was a larger bag, I thought I'd give it a try. And it makes for a nice bag. It's a little harder to sew with than what I typically use, so I probably won't be using that on everything I make, but it's kind of nice to have for sometimes. So I'm very grateful to Kathryn for mentioning In a Pickle Knitting on her podcast, and I hope you'll go over and take a listen. I like to listen to her podcast, even though I crochet a teeny bit. I'd call myself not really a crocheter, but I can and I do sometimes crochet, and I like to listen to her. She gives a lot of information, and she takes you on little trips that she goes on. She took us to Edinburgh, and then she just went to another, I forgot the name of it, but it was a smaller event, and was fairly close to her. But it's fun to watch and listen to what somebody else is doing at festivals and yarny events. So I would recommend that you follow suit and go over and take a look at Crafternoon Treats, and I'll put the information below and of course on the screen. You've probably already seen it by now. So that's what I am grateful for this podcast. 2 more little odds and ends that I just thought I'd throw in today. If you've watched before, and you watched back when I was showing my experiment with different methods of knitting socks or knitting in the round, circular tubes and such. One pair of socks that I started was on the 9-inch circular, and I struggled. Not to do it, I can do it, but my gauge is horrible. My stitches are wonky. Just not happy with it. So I was using a size 1 on everything. I did order a size 0 of the same needle. This is a Chai Gu, size 0, and I thought, well, that'll tighten my gauge up somewhat. It did, but my stitches are still wonky. The gauge is still not even as small as it is on any other method. And so I decided, well, first, those socks really looked bad. I didn't want a whole pair of socks that looked like that, so I did rip it back to the cuff. I left the cuff in, and thought, because the wonkiness doesn't show up quite so much, and if it's a little looser in the cuff, that's okay too. And so I tried the 0, and again, it's just not going to be. And I figured out why. It's the way I tension my yarn. And if I can, I'll try and do a little video. I tried once before, but it's really hard to get the camera view where you want it for trying to knit. I don't know how people do it, but I will try. But that's my problem, is that I tension my yarn so far from where I'm knitting so my finger's going to, I'm a continental knitter, so I tension around my little finger and then over my index finger. But the yarn's up here, and I'm knitting down here. It works for everything, but with the 9-inch circular, it doesn't. You've got such a small circumference here. If I could knit the way some continental knitters do, where they're picking up from their finger, I'd be fine. I tried it a little bit. It just wasn't really comfortable for me, and I don't like rubbing against my skin because eventually I know I'm going to poke a hole. I've done it before, and so I figured out why I'm off on that. So I decided, well, that pair's going to be ripped back, and how will I do them? And everybody's been talking about these Addi Flexi-Flips. That's the name that they came with on mine. Now, I did order a size 0, mostly because the size 1 wasn't available when I was ordering them. They came in this cool tube, And they're really hard to get right now, but there was a size 0, and I do like knitting with zeros, so I'm giving them a try. So this is that sock. I ripped it back to the cuff, and so right here looks a little bit loose, and that's because these stitches are looser. But you'll see I'm getting a nice tight even gauge, and I'm sure as I continue to use them I'll probably get better. I like that one tip is sharper than the other, so if you need to, get in there and do some knit two togethers or any kind of lace, you'll have that sharper tip. But I like knitting just the stockinette with the blunt tip, which isn't, totally blunt, but it is more blunt than the other tip. So they're a little bit different. They have this little flexible part, and you've got your stitches on 2 needles. And you're knitting with that third. And you've probably seen lots of podcasters talk about it. I haven't really heard a lot of positive. I haven't heard total negative from most people, just more like, well, it's not their favorite way. And right now, I would put myself kind of there that, but I know I'm just getting used to it. So I'm going to do this pair of socks, this method, since I'm getting an okay gauge. I would have kept up doing the other if I was getting a good gauge, but I really want these to be, more like this. This is a size 0, and I think the gauge was, I really couldn't tell row gauge because I haven't done enough, but it looked to me about 9 stitches per inch, which is, a nice tight gauge. So that's something, just kind of an odds and ends sort of thing that I know you've heard about, so I'm just chiming in there too. And this really would have been another method if I had, but Chai-Gu doesn't make it. I wanted the same brand. I would have had to buy a whole bunch of Addi needles to do the same needle there. Okay, the other odd and end thing is, I'm going to show you a picture here of my grandson when he was born, almost 3 years ago. He was born in May, so he'll be 3 in May, at the end of May. And this was his brand new blanket. And I knit this from this pattern here. It's James C. Brett, and there's the pattern number, JB174, from a chenille yarn. Now, this is what I knit, but I didn't knit it as a hooded, I think they were using it as a hooded blanket, and I just didn't think we needed a hooded blanket. I just wanted the blanket, and I'd seen it, a sample, knit in the store, and when I looked at it, if you look at that, it almost doesn't look like knitting. It looked almost woven as a new blanket. And if you look then at the picture, I don't know if mine turned out looking quite like that, but very soft yarn. And in the yarn shop, I got this at Hunt Country Yarns out in the Plains in Virginia. And the person I was talking to said that it held up well as a chenille yarn because a lot of them lose a lot of their fuzz. Well, of course, over time it's going to. It's 3 years later, and this is the blanket that my grandson sleeps with every day. And so I thought I'd show it because it doesn't look the same anymore. But it's misshapen, and you can see how it's grown because it's stretched out so much. This has gone washer dryer twice a week, sometimes more. But it has held up fairly well, I think. If you look there closely, there's still a lot of chenille there, and it still has a different stitch there, and I won't go into it because it is in the pattern, but it's really a piece of cake, and it's actually something you've probably done before, but it looks really different on this blanket. So this is 3 years later. What does that chenille blanket look like? And there's little places where my woven in ends have come out, and I brought it here today because I saw a long one, and I'm going to get the crochet hook and try to work it back in so that we don't get anyone pulling on that, because this is a necessary item for sleep at night. So that was my other odd and end. So our last part will be the Etsy shop update that will be happening on Saturday, April 21st, 2018. That's this coming Saturday. Today's Wednesday. And it will be at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the U.S. And so Saturday at 3 p.m. will be the Etsy shop update. And that way I usually do Sunday. I thought, no, this will give me Sunday to get everything packaged up and to be mailed out on Monday, anything that's been ordered at that point. So if you're interested, let me tell you what will be in that update. And first is the bag. This is one of the bags. They are larger bags. They are approximately 12 inches tall, between 11 and 12 inches tall, and a little bit more than 12 inches wide, but I would say 12 inches tall, 12 inches wide in general. They have a contrast fabric at the bottom, which is a brushed canvas, but I have it on the reverse side because the color is more pleasing on this side, but it is a canvas for the strength. They all have a little tag. This one is my favorite, Embrace Imperfection, because that is what I think we should do. Human-made things should be accepting of imperfection. And but I do ask, because there are, I think, 12 different sayings. I have put one on each bag. The step of sewing them on is done earlier in the process, so they can't be switched in and out. And while I do have a few left over, so I on the Etsy site, I list the sayings that could be the ones that are on the bags. If there's one that you absolutely wouldn't want, please, in your comments, if you order it, say you don't want that one and that's all I have left, then I will contact you and we can cancel the order, because I wouldn't want you to get one that you didn't like. I like them all. I like this one best, but I do like them all. So I have to ask that you let me just give you one, and I won't even look at them, just give them out, because there's no way I can guarantee any particular one. They have, the typical handle that I put on there with my label. I'm showing you upside down. There you go. Attached to the side with a little D-ring. There is a little purple tassel. I ordered a whole set of purple tassels, and they aren't totally right, but I found they really were kind of like that. So of course you can take that off. It's just on with a little lobster clasp. This is a 2-zipper bag. The 3-zipper bags are very fabric intensive for getting that pocket for the front. And this fabric, it is it's a twill. It's a little thicker than some of the fabrics that I use, but it's still interfaced and has the fiber fill inside. But inside there is a second pocket. I've got this more orchid color right in here, or maybe like here on the inside. It's very hard colors to match, and especially when you do your shopping, most of it online. But there is an inside pocket with the same fabric. This same size bag, in fact mine I think is a tiny bit more narrow, holds 3 skeins of yarn and my whole shawl. So I can get, you could get a 3-skein shawl project in here. So I would say you could call this a shawl size bag. I don't usually make bags this size. In fact, I've never made bags this size. The top zipper, this is one of the hardest things about this project, was getting a zipper to be a color that looked nice with this. When you use these zippers, the wider zipper with the longer pull, the color selection is limited. They have a silver tab though, because when I ordered them, I ordered the self color, but I also ordered some of this color, and that's not what they sent me. So this worked fine because I do have this silver tone metal over here. So I was fine with that because I just wanted a zipper that would match. The smaller zippers are used on the inside. Those are easy to find, all sorts of colors, but the wider ones are not. So I do have 10 of these bags, and I also dyed 10, and I'm including a little 10-gram mini skein with some of the colors from the bag. So that will be with the bag. Okay, so I don't have any other bags in the shop, and I probably will not be making more out of that fabric. Part of this project is that, which was really what initially started, is I am making not project bags, but some littler, like cosmetic type bags for all of Jean's daughters and daughter-in-law and granddaughters. And so I have fabric set aside for that, and I am working on getting this and some little changes to it to be what I will be making for them. So I don't have more of the fabric. I can order it, but I don't know if I will. Probably I won't, at least at this point. But I dyed some yarn to just go along with this, and I will hold this up just to kind of show you if you think it goes. Not that you have to have it go with this, but that original purple that I had dyed to go with my shawl is this, and I am going to put that in the update. This is 75% merino wool superwash, 25% nylon. And then I also have this color, which is lighter. And these two kind of go nicely together. And then I have one that's sort of in the middle. So pretty much the same colors, but different depths of color. And these are all merino nylon. And then I have a set of minis. And these are merino nylon stellina. So 5%, instead of the nylon, it's 20% and 5% stellina. So these are, two are speckled. This is a light speckled, and then this is a darker speckled. And so kind of see with this. Okay, so that's a set of minis. I only have one set of minis. Now the rest of the yarn I'm going to show is BFL nylon blend. It's a superwash BFL 80%, 20% nylon. So good sock yarn, nice strong sock yarn. I do have two self-stripings. I have this self-striping, and this is going to produce stripes that look like this at the top. Okay, so there's the purplish blue, a speckle, a little bit lighter, and then the kind of a pinkish orchid color. And this is, I think it's about 90 grams in this skein, but a 30-gram mini skein. Okay, then I have a second self-striping, which will be about the same as quantity as I just stated, but I did put the green in this one because the fabric does have the green. But then ultimately I decided, I think I'd leave the green out because I wasn't sure how pleasing that would be for everybody if they're going more of a, not trying to be like this, just color-wise. So this one, the stripe starts here, 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 and then white. So I think there are 5 stripes here. Yeah, 5 different stripes. And then this is just repeating the purple again. So ignore that part because that's a different sock. I've decided I'm going to make some scrappy sort of socks out of some of the yarns that I'm dyeing. Okay, so there's that, 2 self-striping sets. And then I have 2 skeins that are micro-striped. This one here, this micro-striping, is from this skein, which will be called Micro-Stripe 1. Okay, and they're really fairly similar. But this one looks a little bit more in the skein, a little darker, but it really doesn't knit up too much that way. This is Micro-Stripe 2. Okay, and then I have 2 skeins of just more like the others that I was showing you that are on the BFL. Okay, so that will be what is in the Etsy shop update this Saturday. So if you're interested, that's where you can find it and where and when. So let me see what's coming up next. Well, I think that's all that I have for today, and I thank you so much if you've stuck with the show today till the end, till this bitter end here. I appreciate you watching, and I thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope that you are having great fun with your crafting and knitting and crocheting and sewing and anything that you're doing. And I hope that I was able to keep you company today, and that you will come back again in a couple of weeks and visit with me again. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.